Welcome back to another episode of IslamiQA with Faye, where I answer your questions as an ex-Muslim, but questions about Islam. I'm sorry, I introduced that in the completely wrong way that I normally do. I've kind of been out of sorts since the last video. Wow, that pillar's really bright. Let me change it. Sorry. There's a lot of light in here. This is Ed's house. Anyways, yeah, so since the last video, I haven't been myself. I've kind of been going through weird depression spells, and that's normal after I talk about something as heavy as a trigger. It's pretty normal for me to do that. So please excuse me if my activity on Twitter isn't as mind-blowing as it normally is. Or if I don't come across as very sociable. I'm just trying to, deal with everything that I talk about, and I don't know if I'll do, an episode of me crying every single week. I feel like that might be a bit much, but I'll see. I do want to do more fun videos. One of my friend's birthdays is coming up, Alicia's birthday is coming up, and I really, really want to make her a cake. I don't know if I'm going to follow through with that. I'm sorry if you're finding out this way, Alicia. But I would love to bake her a cake, and I have a cake plan. But that weekend, honestly, is just such a busy weekend. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make that specific cake. But I'm definitely going to make something. So I 100% intend to make something for you. I promise. And I would also like to record the making of that cake. I also ordered a buttload of posters and stuff, so I would love to do like a room tour of, my little room that I rent out, and all the stuff that I've put on the walls now that I'm allowed to put things on my walls. Being that when I lived with family, I couldn't have anything on the walls. It was considered like awful or sinful to do that. So I would love to do fun little videos like that. I also have a plan to get another tattoo with my friend Alicia, but we haven't planned that yet. We really need to sit down and plan that out. I don't know if I'm going to record that. I've already done 2 videos on my tattoos. One actually vlogging me getting a tattoo, and the other one just talking about the other tattoos that I have. So I don't know if I'm going to do a whole other video about that, but I mean, that's all down to you. I also want to get piercings, but I probably won't vlog that. But having said that, I've vlogged a lot of things that I said I wouldn't vlog. I don't know, it's all down to the public. But I'm going to ungracefully transition to the topic at hand to answer your questions about Islam. So this week's questions are quite repetitive, but I want to answer them in case you missed them in the other question and answer videos. Sorry, I said that really weird. But yeah, I wanted to address them just in case you missed them in the other videos, or you can't be bothered to watch the other videos because there's no set topic in any of them. So the first question is from @the1platinum. Have you ever been have you been allowed to leave peacefully, or have you received abuse for leaving? Leaving being leaving Islam. I think that question is very self-explanatory. It's not been an easy journey leaving, both from my family and from everyone else. It's been a very difficult transition. The only people who've truly supported me in this are the people who actually love and care and support me, who are my close friends and my boyfriend and his family. Those are the only people that I can think of that have actively supported me in this decision to leave Islam. But yeah. And the second question from the same user is, do you feel like it's been worth it to leave? If so, why? It has been, I would say, about 90% beneficial to me after leaving. I do not regret it in the slightest. And I'll sort of talk about this later as well, The only sort of drawback is that I have less contact with family members that I would like to have, but even when I was a Muslim and living with family, I was still barred from seeing those people. So, I 100% have no regrets about this decision. I am so much happier now, so much freer now, so much more independent now to make my own choices and, do what I really, really want to do and, make steps towards choices that I really want to make in my life and, make my life my own, which I couldn't do before because I was expected to marry someone that was already set up for me. I was expected to, fulfill a role that other people chose for me. I was barred from doing specific kinds of jobs, even though in the family that I was living with, they allowed me to work, but there were specific types of work that they would not allow me to do. I have so much more free reign to do whatever I want and, progress towards what I want out of my life. And I feel like that is, the best possible decision and the best possible outcome I could have gotten from making a decision such as leaving my religion, which was holding me back anyways, and then also leaving my family, who were also holding me back in many other ways. Next question from Chris_Wallace. How do you feel about the show of solidarity with Muslims in New Zealand where all women wore hijabs? So this question was asked around the time that the New Zealand shooting happened, and the Prime Minister, I think they have a Prime Minister of New Zealand had worn a hijab in solidarity with the people who had lost their lives on that day, and there was a hijab day that was set up like soon afterwards for women to wear to show solidarity with the people who had died. I feel as though it would have been equal kind of, but not really, to have worn a cross for Christians who died in a church. It makes no sense to show solidarity in that way because you are limiting a person's identity to their religion. Additionally, hijab was only worn by women. We never saw any men wearing this hijab in solidarity with the Muslims. The hijab isn't a symbol of Islam if that's what you wanted to stand in solidarity with. It's just a covering. And, we've spoken about what the hijab represents many a time on this channel, so we will not be covering it in this video at this moment because that's not what the question is asking. But I feel like that show was disproportionate because it was only women who could show solidarity in this way and also did show solidarity in this way, as well as inappropriate because you aren't showing solidarity to the people when you are just limiting them to a single aspect of their identity, which was that they were Muslims. You couldn't, just have a eulogy for each person who had died or show how valuable those members of societies were to that, community where they had passed away. Instead of doing that, you've just limited them. You've limited, I think, like 55 people. I'm not sure of the exact number. But you've limited that number of people to a single identity. And you've showed your solidarity. It is completely misplaced because you've limited it not only to the identity but also to a garb that is only worn by women. Maybe it would have come off as a little bit more sincere if everybody could join in and all the men, all the women, all the children and everybody could wear a hijab in solidarity. But it just seemed, it just seemed very virtue signally, it didn't seem genuine. It just, I don't know. I don't like talking about tragedy. I've said this many times. And, I was really, really upset to hear that it had happened and watch the video. It was a true tragedy for that to happen. And I just don't like that people trivialize it in this way. They make it about political movements and they make it about gun control when they really should be making it about the fact that people had lost their lives. But moving on from that, before I just bawl all over again. I'm writing down this username. I knew it was going to be difficult to pronounce. From at Uravinala48. I don't know. And they ask, do you feel safe in the UK? I feel very safe in the UK. I mean, there are worse places in the world, and I'm sure there are better places in the world, but I can't really think of one at the minute. I love the UK. The UK is my home. Yeah. You know, every single service that I've tried to take advantage of here, you know, whether be that, you know, job searching, or the police force, or women's shelters, support groups, healthcare, I could not have asked for a better system. I love this country, and I don't see myself, you know, feeling safer anywhere else. Next question from Transcendent FR2. Transcendent FR2. How did it affect your relationship with your community, family and friends, being that I left Islam? How did it affect it? In terms of my family, it completely destroyed my ties. They called me a bunch of names and said I was a disappointment. I'll refer to a couple of my previous videos where people send me horrible comments. Yeah. In terms of my community, I lost a lot of contact. Nobody really said anything to me, but I lost a lot of contact. I lost a lot of friends. I still have Muslim friends who are very progressive and very understanding, and we don't really talk about religion because, let's be real, it's really boring after a while. So I still definitely have that, but for the most part my community just sort of pretended I never existed. In terms of my friends, I have always had very, very strong friends, strong connections with friends, and I don't see that breaking down. I consider them a part of my family. My close friends are my family. They were when I had a family, and they certainly are now that I don't have a bloodline, have a blood-related family. So yeah, it strengthened my friendships where it sort of broke down my family, but you know, that's how it affected it. Next question from the same user. What are your thoughts on the rise of neo-Nazism and anti-Muslim bigotry? And I'll address this within the third question as well, which is, what are your thoughts on the rise of Islamofascism and anti-non-Muslim bigotry? So I believe, to cover the first question, I believe that the rise of these like white supremacist groups are coming from a place of, and I don't want to give them any excuses. This is not an excuse. I think that it has to do with a huge sort of packed feeling. I'm at a loss for words at the minute, but I think that people, instead of voicing their grievances, instead of saying what they need to say, they're bottling up the feelings that they have inside, be that, you know, racist feelings, or, you know, racist thoughts or bigoted thoughts, and they're not being able to voice them, so they're finding communities where they can voice them, and those communities are very radical. In addition to this, and I know this is going to sound weird, but I feel as though racism, it's a good thing that for the most part racism is being, you know, blasted. It's being challenged constantly. But at the same time, I also think that term, racism and racist, is being abused and watered down. And it is being used to silence people who we as coloured people consider privileged. And what I mean by that is, I feel as though these buzzwords like racist, misogynist, you know, bigot, I feel like they're being watered down, and they're just being used to silence white people. And that is what's giving the opposition, which are white supremacists, power, Nazis, power, because these people who have no voice, who can't, talk like the rest of us, whose speech is being limited simply because of the color of their skin, and they're being told that they can't talk about race because they're not black, or they're not brown, or they're not colored. They're being silenced, and their freedom of speech is being limited, so they're taking refuge, or they're letting out these feelings and these thoughts and these emotions in these groups that have very radical ideas, and that is what is giving them support and power. And you'll find that with conservative groups as well. And I'm not likening those to fascist groups at all. Conservatism and fascism are two different things. But you'll also find that people who are looking for freedom of speech, where they used to look in the direction of liberals, have gone over to the side of conservatives. And now, I'm not going to, blast my political leanings here, because honestly, I don't know myself. But that is what I feel like is giving power to these really, really far-right groups. And I think to combat that, we need to reopen. We need to redefine freedom of speech and open it up to everybody, and stop being petty about things like race and sex and religion, and we should just be able to talk about it. I believe, I work with teenagers. I believe that if you have a problem with something, you're better off telling me than just keeping it inside and then letting it explode later. And that is exactly what is happening on a larger scale. So I think that we really need to take this whole, like, you can't talk about this because you're privileged in this way bullshit, and we need to throw it in the garbage. We need to reinstate freedom of speech for what it is. We need to let everybody just talk about what they want to talk about, get it off their chest. 100%, that's what I believe. And in terms of the Islamofascism and the anti-non-Muslim bigotry, the thing with Islam, like, Islam gets away with things in the liberal West that Christianity would not get away with, If we saw it with Christian bakeries when they wouldn't create cakes for LGBTQ couples. We saw them get harassed to the nines, and I'm not going to discuss that, but if it were to happen with a local Muslim bakery, I doubt that there would have been as big a stink of it about it. So now we are seeing this weird leniency for Muslims where there shouldn't be, like with the LGBT protests in Birmingham. Those, as far as I'm aware, are still going on. And it's silly, and I hate it, and I wish it wasn't continuing, because honestly it's embarrassing. But we're seeing this leniency. We're seeing, MPs talk about it and say that parents have the right to decide that their kids shouldn't be talk about LGBTQ people, and it's ridiculous. And I think that is aiding in this idea that Islam will dominate. Like, that's what Islamofascism means, that everybody should be ruled under the Sharia and all of that. I think that's giving power to that, because people are seeing that, Muslims especially are saying that, oh look, people are accepting our way, so we must be right. It's like a confirmation bias. And I don't know, I like culture, don't get me wrong. I enjoy cultures, I like them, but there is a point where we have to say, okay, this is fucked up. Like with FGM, female genital mutilation, any kind of genital mutilation of any child, Like, we have to let that go. I'm sorry. It's a child, they have no say, and you're doing something permanent to their body. Cut that shit out, please, maybe, I don't care if it's a tradition. It's barbaric and we shouldn't be doing it, Like, I don't understand what's so difficult about that. LGBTQ people, we fought for their rights. They're allowed to get married in this country. Why can't we teach kids that some people are going to have two dads, or two moms, or a transgender mother, or a transgender father? Like, how we need to get past this, oh, it's their culture, we have to be sensitive to it. No, if it is harming people, if it's harming someone, they're not entitled to sensitivity because they're harming somebody. Okay? We need to stop being so shy and sensitive about things that are actually affecting people. It's as simple as that. And us like pussyfooting around these issues and not really addressing it like the meat of it. Like we're just kind of just walking around the bush. Oh, FGM isn't really in Islam, but then there's like this huge group of people who believe that it's in Islam. Like we have to stop pussyfooting around it, and the fact that we are pussyfooting around it is giving power to these groups because they're seeing people who are not Muslim accepting their way, and it's confirming what they believe because they feel like, oh, even non-Muslims think we're right, you know? And in terms of what I think about both those sides, I mean, they're both fascist ideas. They're just of a different color, in my opinion. They're both terrible, and we need to combat them with open communication. We need to start talking about these things openly and freely, both in terms of, I need to talk about this, can we please talk about this, please don't limit my speech, and also, dude, this is fucked up, I want you to stop this. Like, we need to open all the lanes for speech. It is important for us to do that in order to combat these groups, because look what's happening around the world. And the last question from the same user was anti-LGBT in Muslim communities. I did an entire video on that, so please feel free to go and watch that if you want. It's about Brunei and the protests in Birmingham and stuff like that. But you know, the LGBTQ community, like, for those of you who aren't from Muslim backgrounds, you really need to wake up to the realities of being gay, lesbian, transgender, queer, questioning, any of that in a Muslim family. Like, we really need to address it, and not just in, you know, in small gatherings. We need to blast it. We need to blast it just like we did with Christianity. We need to blast it in the same way. It has to be completely normal in all communities, and I just don't see it, and I would really like to be part of that movement. Personally, I don't think I am part of, I'm still questioning, to be honest, but I don't think I'm gay, lesbian, transgender. I don't think I am, but I would love to talk about it. I definitely don't know enough about it to talk about it, but I would love to talk about it. I think it's an interesting topic. But moving on, next question from @Dover1510. Do you miss anything about being a Muslim? I miss my family, like specific members of my family, and that's about it. I don't miss anything else. I think if you asked me about 6 months ago, I would have said I miss, you know, the thought of someone watching over me. But I don't really care about that anymore. You know, I was definitely in a more vulnerable place 6 months ago, so I would have missed that more, but I'm not vulnerable in that way anymore. And I think that's, you know, all part of the transition of, you know, letting go of something that you held so strongly to initially. But yeah, if there's one thing that I miss about being an ex-Muslim, you know, miss about leaving Islam, about not being a Muslim anymore, is that I can't see my siblings. Like, that door is closed until they are old enough to actually contact me. But yeah, that'll be it. Next question from Saklik Tanke. I think that's how you say that. How do you see the polarizing conflict between Islam and Western liberalism evolving in the coming years? I don't know. I wish Western liberalism would take the matter a bit more seriously instead of just being like Like it's just like they just pray and they fast. There's nothing wrong with Islam. I wish Western liberalism would take it really seriously. Like actually question like the stonings and the cutting of hands and like everything Saudi does. But I feel like people will come to a place where they're like, okay, some of the stuff that people are doing are kind of fucked up. I hope that they will, and I have a feeling that they will because I know deep down they want that equality. But I think Western liberalism has been so affected by, in quotes, like Islamophobia or like anti-Muslim bigotry in recent years, like the first 10 years after 9/11, that now they're overcorrecting, and that is why they're behaving in this way where they're just like, oh yeah, lady Nike selling a hijab, that's totally okay. It's not virtue signaling at all. It's not enabling a symbol of oppression at all. Or saying that somehow the hijab is empowering, or saying that Islam is the most feminist religion, when it literally says that men have power over women, like, or men are superior to women, or women are deficient in intelligence. Like the Prophet said something like that, and like it's just a huge overcorrection and picking and choosing stupid things to prove their point. But I do think that we'll get past this. It might take a few years, but I think we'll get past this and we'll come to a place of, like, yeah, stuff that Saudi's doing is fucked up. We need to talk about that. And you guys keep talking about the gays like they're not humans. We need to stop talking like that. You guys keep talking to your daughters like they're your property. We need to start talking about that. I think we'll get to that point. The ex-Muslim movement, for example, is definitely growing and opening some eyes about the entire situation. So I do think we'll get there. We'll get to a point where Western liberalism will be talking about Islam like Western liberalism talks about Christianity. And if it doesn't, if anybody thinks that that won't happen, I just hope it will. Like, I have a true hope and belief that it will. I believe in people. We're going to get there. I'm sorry. I know I'm like really slow in this video. I'm just like really tired. Next question from, and it might be the last question for now. I might record a little bit later. From Chetan_Nike. What keeps most Muslim in Islam? Clearly they are misogynistic verses in the Quran. Do some women start believing that they are inferior to men? It's not that they start believing in most cases. There aren't many converts to Islam, despite popular belief. But we're just raised in that way. We're never actually told that we're inferior to men, but we are constantly drilled with the fact that we have to obey men in order to please God. And I feel like the fact that we're inferior is just never, it's unspoken. It's understood, but it's unspoken. And if somebody asks us, do you think you're inferior to a man? We immediately go into denial mode. As like, from when I was a Muslim, that's what would happen to me, and I would start spewing like, oh, the first Muslim was a woman, it was Khadija. The first martyr was a woman, Sumaya. Aisha, the Prophet's wife, and his child bride, like memorized a third of like the third most hadith ever to be recorded, and you just spew nonsense and miss the point entirely. But I don't think women understand that by accepting obedience to her father or her husband, or after the above, her son, she's literally being submissive to men and by extension being inferior. But I don't think it clicks immediately that she's inferior. And to be honest, I don't think many Muslims read and understand the Quran. I studied Arabic for 5 years. I read the translation of the Quran periodically, but it never occurred to me that I was inferior to a man. I just thought that this was my place in the world, and that was it. You know, there are, and that's just what it is when you're a Muslim. You just give everything. You just give everything to your religion, and you don't care about the rest. And that's exactly what Islam is. Islam in itself means submitting your will, and that's all you do. You know, doesn't matter who you are, men, women, whatever. You just submit everything, and you don't question it. And I think that's what happens. Take that for what you will. I think that's what happens. I'm gonna pause this video now, and I might do some more questions later on because this is being uploaded later anyways. So see you in a second. It's gonna be a second for you. So I know it's only been like a second for you, but it's been like a day for me. And we're gonna return to the questions. Yes, I know my hair is wet. No, I do not care. Yes, I am wearing the same thing as yesterday. It's Sunday. Fucking sue me. I'm over it. So let's get back to the questions so that I can post this. So from @techagnostic, what do you think about cognitive dissonance amongst Muslims reconciling 7th century text in 21st century lifestyle? I don't think too much about it. I think it's a stupid idea and it doesn't make any sense. And Muslims only do it because they're terrified of going to hell after they die. That is it. Hello, Ed. Ed just took out the rubbish because he's a good boy.
Bukkake!
Terrible. I'm cutting that out. It's getting cut.
Bitch get cut? What?
Yeah, actually, it's not getting cut. I'm keeping that in.
Oh, fuck. Why do you do this?
You done making the noise? Are you done making the noise?
Yes.
Okay. From Max_Hudson_UK, would like to understand your rationale for denying the existence of a creator of the worlds. Do you know how easy it is for a creator of the worlds who is understood to be the most powerful? Do you know how easy it is for him to just be like, hey guys, I'm here. I would like you to worship me. Do you know how easy that is? Without all the like long ass, here's a messenger from a mountain that I spoke to through a bush that was on fire bullshit. Like, do you know how easy that is? There is no strong evidence. There is fairy tales and myths and men with madness that come along and say, I'm a messenger of God, and that is the only proof that he exists. There is no hard evidence that can be testable that there's an existence for God, first of all. Second of all, I don't like the fact that God lies about himself, okay? He calls himself the most merciful, and then he burns his creation for eternity. He sets up an arbitrary point system and says, because you ate this much, prohibited meat, or whatever the fuck, you're going to burn in hell forever, endlessly, because you decided that you couldn't find any evidence for me, and you just went along with your country's traditions, and you worshipped other gods apart from me. You're gonna burn in hell forever. That's why I don't like him, because he is a fraud. He lied when he said that he's the most merciful. He's clearly not. He's burning his own creation, basically his children, in hell because they don't believe in him. From @feminismislies, that is the username, it is not my opinion. Why do you think Western feminists have such a fascination with a patriarchal religion, and why do they casually choose to wear the hijab, I'm assuming, for what many women in Muslim countries who don't have a choice are symbols of female oppression? Because Islam is the brown man's Christianity. They feel like if they talk against Islam, they are talking against brown people, and they're overcorrecting. That is it. That is why I think they do that. I'm not saying it's right, but I feel like that's the logic for why they behave that way. I kind of addressed this the last, before today. But I think there is a huge problem of overcorrecting for what happened after 9/11, when Muslims were ostracized for what happened to, what they called the Twin Towers? Yeah, for what happened to the World Trade Center. And they're just overcorrecting now because of, after years of ostracism, that's what people need to do. My hair is doing whatever it wants. But yeah, I don't know, I don't understand why you would wear a hijab in solidarity with Muslims. I feel like that's stupid because you're only really showing solidarity, if it can be called that, with female Muslims. If you wanted to wear something more universal, just, I don't know, wear moon and star or something. I don't know. I think it's silly to show solidarity. People only show solidarity when they want to prove a point or virtue signal. So I mean, it's pointless regardless. From at David Awfulbot, if an Islamic party stood for election, in your view and experience, would a large number of practicing Muslims, moderate or not, vote for it? They probably would. They probably would, in my opinion, from what I've seen. They're not very well read in politics, and that is why we need to get them involved and talk to them about politics and how it works. But and there's a huge percentage of Muslims that do not vote because they feel like they can't, because democracy isn't part of Islam. No matter how many times I hear it and every time I laugh, democracy is not part of Islam, so they decide that they can't vote because it's a haram system. But if an Islamic party stood, they probably would attempt to vote that in. Now, I don't think there's going to be an Islamic party. Muslims are a huge minority in the UK. But it is a very real prediction to say that if something like that existed, it would, people would vote for it. Mainly because people don't understand voting and looking up candidates and parties. But there you go. From at Kevin Ulner, how much do threats against potential apostates control or restrict people leaving Islam, and without that inherent threat, could Islam survive? So the first part, how much do they control and restrict people from leaving Islam, the threats? In my experience, a huge amount, because you are asking to lose a lot if you lose religion in a Muslim family. You are asking to lose your family, first of all. You're asking to lose any, connections you have to friends who are close, like practicing Muslims. You are asking to lose your community, so you would have no support. And in most cases, Muslims' families don't really believe in individualism. They don't really teach their kids to become independent. So a lot of young Muslims are very dependent on their parents. So if they were to leave Islam, they would lose all financial backing. If they're in a Muslim country where you are either, under the Muslim law or according to mobs, you could be killed. You could be asking to lose your life. If you are married and you have kids, you are asking to lose all of that. You are asking to lose your spouse and your children. It is a huge, huge, huge decision to come out as an apostate in Muslim families, because you literally lose everything. You have nothing left to lose. So, and in some cases, you even lose your life. So it's a great way to keep Muslims in Islam, because leaving would mean either exile or death or threat, at least violence, And without it, how would Islam survive? Or could Islam survive? I don't think so, because I feel like a lot of people know that Islam is bullshit. They're just in denial. There were instances right after the Prophet died where people wanted to leave Islam, and that rule was really implemented about killing apostates so that people would stay in Islam, and that's how they kept a lot of people in Islam. So it's the threat definitely keeps people in Islam, and I don't think it would survive as well if there wasn't that threat of violence and exile and ostracism. If it wasn't there, I feel like a lot of people would just straight up just be like, okay, I'm out. I tried it, it was fun, great, I'm going now. But that is the last question for this round. I know I split it up into 2 uncomfortable segments, but there you go. That was this week. I don't know if I'm gonna do another one of these videos next week, because next week is my friend's birthday, and I would like to record myself making a cake. But we'll see. We'll see by popular vote. If you guys really want another video next week, I will do it. There is still plenty of questions, but always remember that you can ask more in the comments below or on Twitter. And that's how you can reach me. I'm sorry for the weird interlude where Ed was just screaming. But yeah, I will see you in the next one. And I'm sorry about my hair. It keeps doing whatever it wants. Goodbye.